Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.
Hi folks, welcome back to Through a Scottish Prism. I hope you and yours are well. It's another wee midweek special of Meet the Candidates. Meet some more of the Alliance to Liberate Scotland candidates, which we're going to keep doing between now and election time. It'll let you meet these people and find out who's going on. So today I'm delighted to welcome Laura Hansler, who's the candidate for Skye, Lochaber and Badenoch, as well as on the Highland list, and David there, who's standing in Central and Lothian, David Baird. Welcome, guys. Thanks for giving me your time today.
Thank you very much.
Good. Well, thank you, Roddy.
But it's I've said this to everyone that I've been talking to or standing as candidates. I have the utmost admiration for what you're doing. I think some of the people watching don't understand the courage it takes, because you when you put your head above the parapet, it takes a lot of courage. But David, you've got quiet life. You could have just continued on minding your own business, going to the caravan and having a good life. Why did you feel you needed to step into the breach?
Simple, Roddy. I mean, I've been involved for over 40 years. I first joined the SNP at 16 back in 1982, post that first referendum, and then watching Thatcher demilitarise, deindustrialise the central belt of Scotland. My dad was a miner, then he worked for British Leyland, which went down the tubes. We saw Ferrari going down the tubes. Latterly, we saw Ravenscraig, and we saw the pits. Now, during the miners' strike, the local colliery, Polkemmet, 4 miles out the road at Whitburn, and we've seen the hardship that families had to go through. So ever since then, I believed in Scottish self-determination and the right for the Scottish people to make their own way in the world, instead of being dictated to by governments that weren't elected by us, didn't look like us, and had a different world view from what we had.
Yep.
And here it is, 40 odd years later. I've been a councillor twice. I was the organiser for Uddingston Bells Hill area for the referendum. I set up about 8 different groups during that period, kept it grassroots, and encouraged locals to come forward, and then I coordinated that, and it's just been continuous since then. Our own Yes group, Yes Bells Hill and Moss End. We still go to events. We went to most events. We put stalls out. So even though sort of health has had its toll on us the last couple of years, the brain's still there. The mind's still active, and the mind's still passionate about it. Though physically, it's a bit of a task, but that's why I decided to come forward again, because there's nothing happening with it within the SNP. The SNP are putting, as Jimmy Sanderson, they're only interested in putting bums in seats. They're only looking to keep the payroll ongoing. They've had 5 mandates. They've pissed them up the wall. They've done nothing with them.
No.
They keep saying it. John Swinney's just the third to take the place of Oliver. With the begging bowl, asking for more porridge. He's been told under no circumstances. Yeah. I don't know what evidence it really needs to understand that there is no way Westminster can afford at this time to allow Scotland to become an independent nation. They need our resources, as they always have done. Yeah. And that's basically it, Roddy.
Sorry, on you go.
I felt, going back to speaking, spoke with Phil back in the autumn, and that Alba had sort of lost its way. It was playing a sort of support role for the SNP, and I thought, no, we need something. We need the grassroots. We need the 20% of the population that believes in independence, that doesn't support the SNP anymore. Like myself, the first time I didn't vote was the last Westminster election, because I wasn't going to vote for a candidate I had no faith in. I wasn't going to vote for a candidate that was going to go and be a good parliamentarian in Westminster. I didn't want good parliamentarians in Westminster. I want parliamentarians who are going to stand up for Scotland. I want them to fix the wrongs within our country and do that within a Scottish Parliament. And that is basically why I'm here now.
And welcome. We're delighted to have you on board. Laura, you're living in a beautiful part of the world. You could just have a nice, quiet life, but you decided to step forward. Why did you do that?
Well, I mean, it's a kind of long story, I suppose. I mean, I suppose I used to terrorise my father when I was about 3-year-old. I first came away with every country should be self-determining their own sort of outlook in life, and they should have the right to represent themselves. I don't believe in any country should be governed by a foreign entity at any point at all. And as I say, I used to really terrify my father with my thoughts. But having said that, going back years ago, I was involved with SSP. I was on all the anti-war rallies down in Glasgow. I worked down in Glasgow and Paisley for a number of years. I was in the NHS down there, qualified down there. I was a trade union down there. I was a shop steward for a number of years as well, under different hats. And then I've done a lot of political campaigns up here. I think I formally joined SNP. It was prior to the referendum, and I think it was 2010, 2011. I formally joined them. I left them in 2022. Done my fair bit of campaigning. I took the Highlands and Islands Fire and Rescue Service through Parliament in 2014. That went on for about 5 or 6 years to stop the centralisation of the control rooms. Now, that didn't come around, but what I did manage to achieve in that process was to create control room reform, which was sorely needed at the time. I then had a massive campaign with Scottish Water locally, but it kind of went nationally in its kind of attention that it drew. But I think one of the biggest campaigns at the moment for infrastructure, and also I've got Fergus students backing on this as well, has been the A9 Gilling campaign, which I've headed up since 2022. And as a direct result of that, and because of the conflict of interest that I knew that would be, and I would not have that on my conscience, I formally left the SNP because I knew the attacks, and I did get attacked for it. And I left them to it because till this day, I represent the bereaved families and those people with life-changing injuries. But you're talking about a long period of time there campaigning, you don't get a penny for it. If anything, I was probably out of pocket for it. If there's a very serious RTC on the A9, I make myself available to anybody that needs that kind of support. So sometimes it could be 12, 13, 14-hour days, constantly on social media, trying to advise people where and what roads are open, where they can be. People are stuck, because if the A9 gets stuck, then Scotland can ground to a halt, let's face it.
Yep.
And for too long, the people in the Highlands and Islands are not being listened to. Our voices are being drowned out. We're being muted. We're being gagged. And it's about time, I think, that a local voice that can be heard is heard. And so it was time for me to use my voice for the greater good, stick my head right above the parapet, as you say, Roddy. Yes, you get it in the neck from some, but you also learn to end up having a tortoise shell on your back to save yourself with a knife between your shoulder blades, and you crack on because you know that you can use your voice for the greater good. And I would say the support I've got far more outweighs the ones that are trying with their trolling or their momentary disdain and their tut-tuts, I'd like them to stick their head above the parapet and tell us exactly what they've achieved with their lives.
Oh yeah, I've noticed that a lot of the keyboard warriors sending me messages saying you should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing the next thing, or you shouldn't have done this, you should have that. Yeah, well, why don't you Why don't you
Yes,
join?
exactly.
For 2 years we were saying, come and join us. We need help. We can't do this on our own. They don't appear. But that's the funny thing, David. Every poll for the last 2 or 3 years that's done showing that there's a 50% plus for independence. And we've had no campaign since 2014. Can you imagine? What would it be like if we get the campaign? That's what the Alliance to Liberate Scotland are trying to do. Recreate the Yes movement, have an independence plebiscite. If everyone got behind that, can you imagine how high that figure could go?
If that ever happened, Roddy, we'd be independent. That's the truth of the matter. But the fact is, it's not suiting particular parties for that to happen. It means burying the hatchet. We saw Alex Salmond attempt that while he was in Alba to try and promote, the Scotland First approach. And we've seen recently the full explanation of that, the fact that over 1 million votes only returned 2 list MSPs. Now, if an agreement had been made, people like myself would have held my nose and went out and voted SNP at the constituency level. If the SNP membership and voters were then advised by the party to go out and vote, whatever it was, the way it was split up for, whether it was Alapa or ourselves now, Alliance to Liberate Scotland, or the ISP, or anyone else. And all it would take is something like 5,000-6,000 votes in each region for one alternative nationalist member to be returned. So can you imagine if in our area, our central, I'll take my own area, if we got 30,000 votes, we'd be capable of getting 3 members at least on that. And if you multiply that, that's another 24 members across the whole of Scotland, if that's replicated. But the SNP and John Swinney won't do that because he can't be seen to be the lesser of the nationalist parties. You would have people in there who are more fundamentalist in their beliefs, that they, like ourselves, we only want independence. We don't want to be a party of government. And that's where the problem lies. The SNP, when I joined it, when you joined it, and even up to when Alex Salmond was doing it, he was still pushing the idea. Now, I didn't agree with the sort of gradualist approach, the devolution approach that John Swinney has pushed since the late 90s, and when he failed as leader of the party the first time, when I voted against him and that. Now, he's pushed that, but Alex still got there, and they had an end point, and that end point was to get to where they overcame the inbuilt bias within the Holyrood system, that they got a majority, and then they used that majority to get a referendum. That's happened once. That will only happen once. It can't happen again. Westminster will not allow it. It can't afford it. And it can't afford it for numerous. It's not just the energy. If you look at Keir Hardie, they put forward a 10-year programme of infrastructure to upgrade the UK. And the only spending in that 275 million of government money is £5 billion to improve the power grid in Scotland so that the energy can be taken to England. Now that's the only infrastructure spending in there that is directly associated with Scotland, but it's for England's principles. England, or the Royal Navy, if you look at it, they're all going, why are you not sending ships? They don't have them to sell. The one ship, Type 45 frigate, they were supposed to have 13 of them. The price went up and they ended up with 6. at twice the price. So basically, each of those ships cost 4 times more than what it was originally going to cost. And they're hardly at sea before they have to come back and get fixed. They can't run in hot water.
Exactly. So they
the
can't go to the
Gulf.
Gulf.
Power plants, right? So I can't handle the Gulf. The submarines, they've only got, the submarines. There's a chap, Mark Felton, watch YouTube a lot, and he does a lot of the military, Second World War, etc. But he done one in he broke the Royal Navy down, and it's absolutely abysmal. If Scotland goes independent, they've got 2 years, maybe 3 years to clear out Faz Lane. Where do they go to put those boats? Plymouth, Portsmouth, Devonport? I don't think so. They're not going to take them there. So, there's that aspect to it as well. So we're paying for, for the largesse, the United Kingdom, and the
delusion, the delusion of being a world power as well. We're paying for that.
Definitely. I mean, the whole problem, you've seen Norway coming in and order frigates. The UK hasn't been able to properly guard or patrol the North Atlantic for 25 years or more.
Yeah.
They don't have the ships. They don't have the sailors. So,
an island nation.
They're living on grandeur, a false view of their position within the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I believe that there was some. I read somewhere they've got 19 surface ships and 48 admirals. It's just something ridiculous. And also these aircraft carriers. I believe if you look at the ones in the Gulf of the Americans just now, there's about 12 ships in a group. There's like 2 submarines, or I don't know. I'm not a military, but frigates and destroyers to protect the aircraft carrier. We've got 2 aircraft carriers that break down, can hardly get out of territorial waters, but we don't have the ships to protect them or the planes on them to fly off them. It's a joke.
No.
A joke. Ideas of grandeur. But this Parliament, Laura, when it was constructed at first, they put in place a voting system, and it was done by the Unionists, and I wish the people in Scotland would pay attention. They did it so that it would be virtually impossible. 2011 was an absolute fluke. That you would take 2 parties, and that was, of course, meant to be the Liberal Party and the Labour Party, and it was to keep the SNP out and keep the Tories out. That's what this was all about. And it's still the case today. With that voting system, you need 2 parties
absolutely
to make a majority.
I was round the doors on Saturday, and without saying too much, I had somebody say to me, but I've got a degree in politics. I said, well, why are you still persistent in telling people to vote SNP 1 and 2 unless you are distinctively trying to tell them and mislead them down an alleyway? Because it was something like 1,923 votes that have returned to MSPs. You can't get it. What is it going to take to get this to haunt through to people? That it was designed for failure. It was designed to make sure that no one party can saturate a vote. That it doesn't matter how many SNP votes you make, you will not saturate it. It's not going to happen. It doesn't allow it to happen. And I am sick and tired of telling people, the list vote in itself is so complicated to the man in the street, if you like. And you say, right, it's your second vote. Well, why have you not got and I had somebody say it to me, you should have the balls to have your name on the list vote. I went, nobody has their name on the list vote. It's the party. I mean, you should still have the balls to put your name on the list vote. No, nobody puts their name on the list vote. It's not up to me. Believe me, it's not up to me. It's a party. So you can't get it through to them. Then you've got to explain the ranking. And the way I'm trying to say to people now is, if you persist, and some of them are persistent, and it's either out of habit or it's eking back to when the SNP did get that absolute, landslide victory of sorts that they had, as much as they're going to get, that isn't going to be repeatable. If you persist in doing it this time round, you show me one independence voter, one true indie person that wants Reform UK to get a seat in Scotland. Show me them, because that's all they're doing. They're warming the bloody seats for the backsides of Reform UK. And they're going to keep doing it, and they need to stop. They need to stop, take a breath, and look at what Dehon is actually designed to do, and take their damn blinkers off, take the rose-tinted glasses off, because they're buying done with those rose-tinted glasses aren't for resale. Take them off and look at the truth of the matter.
Yeah, it's what's got to be done. There is, in my opinion, I don't know if you agree with me or not, David, but I think there's a ceiling for the unionist votes. And at the moment, reform, wasn't that long ago, Ruth Davidson and all the unionist votes were coalescing around the Tories and Ruth Davidson. And then they went back to the Labour Party in July 24. That vote, it's a ceiling. We could, that's the thing I find so frustrating, David. If our movement could get the feeling of 2014 again, we could be negotiating our independence on May the 8th. We could start the process.
I totally agree, Roddy. That's the dream that we all have and share. The problem we have is that the media, etc., they have their own agenda, and that is putting forward the SNP as the yes movement. It's as simple as that. If you look at the polls and how they're aggregated, and even the National is misleading in them, because they only basically look at the first past the post aspect of it, and try to do it, because it's impossible then to take from a poll unless you're actually asking that specific question. A lot of them aren't, of how they're going to use their vote on the list aspect of it. It's a shame. I mean, we used to pride ourselves in being a well-educated nation, but when it comes to common sense, a lot of people are either too busy or they're quite laissez-faire when it is. They'll pick it up from the media. They'll hear a quick look at the Daily Record, the Herald. They'll see what's on social media, and they'll just take that. They don't fully understand the mechanics, and it's really quite simple. You take the number, the total number of votes you get, and you divide it by how many constituency MPs you got, add 1, and that'll give you a figure. And if you do that for all the parties, then the one with the highest number of votes at that point gets the seat. And then you do it again, and you do it again, and you do it again. And the SNP's numbers, when you take it and divide it by in each region, because it's not done nationally. A lot of people think, the votes are done on a national basis, and then they're handed out. It's not. It's done at a regional level. So you take the regional vote and divide it, find out who your first candidate or your first winner is, and then do those sums again and again and again. And there's no way the SNP's got to do that. Where if we had a true a bit of integrity within it, the election system, rather than this partisan basis that we've got at the moment. If people were more open-minded and viewed it, then the other smaller independence parties would achieve that, and then you have got that supermajority within the parliament, and that's one thing I don't think the SNP want, and they don't want it because they would then be put in the position of having a group of MPs or MSPs who are pro-independence and won't sit back and take it when John comes back and says, no, Keir will not give any more porridge. I tried, I've asked. What's his second stage? He's already, anything he says that he can do or will do if he gets that majority, he has had that mandate, for the past 5-6 years to do it, and he's not used it. He's been told no, so he had the option then of saying, right, fair enough, you said no, I'm going to collapse the parliament, I'm going to end the parliament, there's no point in taking this on, and we'll have a plebiscite, and that will then get the attraction of the unionists, because they'll then know that this is going to be used if they don't agree to the outcome at that point, then it's simple. You just declare UDI and then watch them panic. Because at that point, you've then proved to the United Nations and the other countries in Europe and that round about you that you've tried to play in their sandpit with their rules. You've beat them, but yet they are denying and they're in breach of the articles that they signed for when the United Nations was set up, and that is the right of self-determination. And that's the one thing that Holyrood is missing: a leadership that is prepared to say self-determination means we determine our future, not you, not you in Westminster.
No, quite right. And talking of the media, I would just say this, folks, that the so-called supporter of independence, the paper We Support Independence, have not used the press release given to them by Alliance to Liberate Scotland declaring our candidates for the region. They didn't think it was a big enough story about independence. A new independence party is formed with 37 people standing on the list. Tells you all you need to know about the so-called national newspaper. But here's the thing. Anarachs like us, Laura, we understand the haunt and know that it's a fixed system. But how do we get that message out to the voting public, the people who won't even be switching on to the election yet, not for another 3 or 4 weeks? How do we get them to understand and vote wisely?
I think, as I said before, Roddy, I think if you explain to them, I don't think they don't have a clue. There's like about 8 filters, as I call it, in this to haunt on the list. And if you start explaining to them, right, 1,923 votes, 2 MSPs, it's just trying to explain to them that's facts. I will be transparent at all costs. For anybody that has any faith in me, I will be completely and utterly transparent with them. And that's your fact. You wasted 1,923 votes to return 2 MSPs. If you think the SNP are still going to be, taking the majority of the constituencies, please, please, please be careful with that second vote. Some of the constituencies, don't get me wrong, got to speak up for myself here. You want to maybe do Alliance to Liberate Scotland as your first choice and then an indie party in your second choice. But watch what you're doing, because if you don't vote wisely, it's typically the SNP 1 and 2 lot that are just head down, blinkers on, nobody's talking to me. That's what I'm going to do. Don't care what you tell me. You've just got to blind them with science, give them the facts. That's your facts. You're going to have to deal with the facts. As I say, I've got a degree in politics coming at me the other day. Well, are you deliberately trying to mislead voters in? Because that's what you're doing. Again, anybody in social media, anybody watching this tonight, you show me one true independence person in Scotland that wants to give Reform UK a seat, because you vote SNP 1 and 2, that second vote will go straight to them.
Yeah.
If they're not careful.
No, that's one of the big problems I've noticed, for quite some time now, David, is that the biggest attacks, for example, that are coming to Alliance to Liberate Scotland, or that went to Alapa before us, are coming from people allegedly on the same side. They're putting their party before the cause. And, while we've tried to do this, do you think this single policy idea of Alliance to Liberate Scotland is wise? It's been put in place so that, you as candidates are answerable to your constituents, not to a party whip. Do you think that the single policy is a benefit in being elected?
I do. And people say, oh, you've not got a manifesto. It wouldn't matter if we had a manifesto, because it doesn't matter. If you look at whatever party is standing in Holyrood, they've got 2 options, and that is rob Peter to pay Paul or shuffle the deck chairs. That's where they have to start. It doesn't matter what brief you hold, whether it's housing, health, communities. You've got a fixed income. You can only spend what you get. Scottish Parliament can't run a deficit. So the only thing they can do is rejiggle the pocket money. Now, we have got, and I've seen poll after poll, top of people's concern is the cost of British crisis, as I like to call it, because it is the cost of being within a British union, because most of the costs that are inflicted upon us that went through the roof, i.e. food, electricity and fuel costs, are because of policies instigated as far back as Margaret Thatcher with energy and the Brexit. The cost of food has went through the roof because of Brexit. Boris Johnson says, "Oh, it's got to get cheap. It's got to be cheaper than chips." No, it's not, and we know that. And families are struggling for it. We had the energy minister come out and said, "Oh, he didn't see any need for a review into the pricing of electricity." Whereas if you look at what the chief executive of Octopus Energy said, that if Scotland, if we adopted a regional pricing policy, Scotland would be paying something like 2.5 pence, 3 pence for a kilowatt hour. That'd be the cheapest in Europe, because we produce that much of it. We produce that much that we can't use it. We can't export it because the infrastructure was never put in. Didn't put the infrastructure in, but they allowed companies, especially from England, set up in England, to come to the north to put up windmills, knowing that they would get money, because there was a contract for difference, which they guaranteed them a basic price, and then they would get paid even if they didn't need that electricity, they would get the same. And then our electricity, which is set at something like 3p to generate, we have to pay the same price as gas generated electricity, which Margaret Thatcher made one of the main forms of electricity generation in England. She shut down all the pits. We know about her vendetta against the miners. She closed the pits. So the coal went out. Oh, we've got liquid natural gas in the North Sea, we'll use that. And she was told by, the scientists and that at the time, do not use natural gas to generate electricity. It is a waste. It's a commodity that, is finite, and you'll need that later on. So that happened. What happened to the infrastructure? Did they put the privatised companies that she put in place, British Gas, did they put the required infrastructure in to build up a resource in case prices went high? No, they didn't. They got managed, they got passed on the minimum that they needed to store it for 3 weeks.
Yeah.
So we don't have any resilience there. So this all comes back to the point you were making. Independence, nothing else, nothing more. Because only with independence do you get the full set of tools. You don't get a hammer, a Stanley knife, and a screwdriver. You get access to everything you need. And when you've got access to all the tools that a government can have, all the fiscal tools, all the fiscal levers, you can then start to seriously address these problems that this country's facing, whether that's child poverty, which I sometimes, I get a bit angry about, because if there's child poverty, there's parent poverty, there's unemployment. I mean, if you go back, Thatcher was accused of leaving people, quite happily sacrificing people onto the dole just so that the middle classes could progress and we could continue down this road of neoliberal exploitation that this country's went through. People have got a bit better, more financially, or so they seem, but we're now seeing it. Every community in in Scotland now has more food banks than actual banks. Because Westminster's allowed them laissez-faire banking, so they don't want to serve the communities. And I think that's part of the problem. We no longer service the communities and the individuals in them. Government only serves the businesses. They're only interested in serving them and making things easier for them. So with independence, go back to what you said, Roddy, independence is, to me, the only lever that we can use to then address these issues, whether it's in health, there's always a wee bit of efficiency that they always go on about, that can be scraped by. But efficiency just usually means cutting down in materials. You've still got the same amount of people employed, and as a former ex-councillor, you see that, you start to see it by, they've still got the same amount of people who cut the grass. They just don't cut the grass as often. So what are they doing when they're not cutting the grass? It's no efficiency, it's no effective. And to me, that's it. You want the tools to do the job, then you need independence, because that's the only way you'll get the tools to do the job.
Indeed, independence, nothing else, independence, nothing less. Because the other thing that the Miliband said when they were talking about regional pricing was that, well, the Scots would have cheap electricity and that wouldn't be fair on the people in England, right? But it's okay that we've the dearest and it's fair to us when we're paying the dearest and England's paying the least. But here's the thing about devolution, in my opinion, Laura, is this. It's actually gone as far as you can take it. We've talked about, there is really, as David says, there's nothing much we can do. We can tickle around the edges and, a wee baby box here and there, but there's really nothing major you can do. Like, for example, build it proper, not just the A9, but the A96 and all the other roads, and put in the proper, put in steel yards again and put in shipyards and do all the things. We can't do that in devolution. It's maxed out.
Yeah, no, I mean, the things that are even coming out on the leaflets just now from the SNP are stuff that we've had. We've had the free prescriptions for a decade. We've had the baby box now for a number of years. We've had X, Y, and Z. There's things being promised in those leaflets now that actually Alec put in, and this is what really rattles me. And you look at the bigger picture, and Scotland's been deindustrialised now for decades. Even prior to Thatcher, we're being deindustrialised. What do we actually build for ourselves anymore? And we're leaving ourselves so open. A classic example right now is the price of the fuel that we rely an awful lot up here on oil central heating. I don't. I'm all electricity, so lights go out, I'm all out. Unfortunately, I freeze. But a lot of my neighbours are on oil central heating. But the price at the pumps, I'm trying to tell people at the door, see the fuel that you're using at the moment, it's not even coming in from the Middle East. It's sitting in tanks dotted around this country. But we've seen Grangemouth being decommissioned and all, so we've left ourselves wide bloody open to fuel security.
Yeah.
And so we're now paying, I was going to come away with a really strange turn of phrase now, but we're actually being held over a barrel right now, if you don't pardon the pun, but we absolutely are. And there's no need for this. There's absolutely no need for it. And Scotland is getting shafted left, right and centre.
Correct. We're the only oil-producing nation in the world without a refinery now.
It's ridiculous.
Think about that, folks. Think about that.
They also tried to get, don't forget, they tried to get away with the St Fergus gas pipeline as well. It's not that long ago that we had to fight for that to, keep that in place. And God help us if that went as well.
Yep. Next thing is they'll come for the water. They haven't yet, folks. Some people think they have. They haven't yet, although there's plans afoot for it. They take Welsh water, lots of that, and they get the same problem in Wales. They pay more for the water from Welsh water than they pay for the Welsh water. But we're not a colony. No, we're not a colony. Here's the thing that worries me most of all, because it goes back to the SNP 1-2 votes, and if, as we found out in 2011, strange things can happen with this DeHunt system, David. And if it could be, the law of averages says that sooner or later, the unionists are going to get a majority. Maybe not on this occasion, but they will. And if they do, then those things that Laura's talking about, that Alec put in place, prescriptions, the baby boxes and free health care for the elderly, no tuition fees, they are in danger. And an SNP 1-2 vote could actually see us losing all that.
I totally agree, Roddy, and I think that's where a lot of SNP supporters and members let themselves down by not being aware of the political arithmetic that the list system has on the makeup within Holyrood. I think there's a potential saving grace in it for them, because any hope of a comeback by Labour, following their 2024 results at Westminster, has been undermined by Keir Starmer, and that's sort of levelled it out a bit. We can only hope that it never happens, or we can pray that nobody would consider getting into bed with reform. We've seen what's in their manifesto. It's been torn to shreds, but again, it's basically attacking any progressive issues that the Scottish Government has dealt with. It just beggars belief that people out there, I can understand why people are frustrated with political parties, but reform isn't the solution. And the thought, the majority are Tories, but I mean, I think it's more accurate to call them the British Union of Fascists. The 21st century. Aye, I mean, Nigel Farage is just a modern day Oswald Mosley. The only difference is Nigel Farage is more open to brown envelopes and making money and doing the bidding of anybody that's willing to pay for him. And we've seen that, a man who doesn't pay any income tax because he's the sole employee of a company that he set up. It's, it always beggars, it always makes me wonder, how can you set up a tax system that allows an individual to become a company so that it can pay itself in loans and dividends? But that's been British for you, I suppose. But going back, this whole thing, I think it goes back. What it reminds me, and I feel it will be self-inflicted. There was a young chap just after the referendum in George Square, and he said, "Bring it on, bring it on. Do your worst. Just let it happen. You want it, go and do it, because I think that's what would really need to happen to get it through to some people within the so-called yes movement, nationalist movement, that what they are playing with is that opportunity, because you've already seen Keir Starmer putting out a letter saying to wee Dougie, if you want to do anything in Scotland, just go ahead and do it. Don't bother about what Swinney or the Parliament will say. And the very same in Wales, that message has went out, and that's come out from Keir Starmer, from the British government, i.e. just ignore the devolved nations. So that shows you how important it is. And it also explains why John Swinney's been kept out or not getting the briefings that he should be getting briefings, or the place he should be accorded, because he holds the position of First Minister. He's maybe not a good one, but he's still a First Minister, and he should be accorded that privilege. And that's not happening there. But again, it just shows there is no respect. No. They don't care. That they're standing on a different hill. Their world is, their world viewpoint is from that hill, and it doesn't matter about the people in the far peripheries. They'll let them get on with it. So no, I think that's where I would say if people and if that situation had to happen, Roddy, then we're only ourselves to blame. Yeah. And I'm not going to say, well, I didn't do it and be self-righteous about it. The independence movement, the so-called yes supporters, have allowed a situation to occur where unionist parties get seats that they don't deserve, all because voters vote SNP too, because they're either too thick, they're intransigent, or they're just partisan politics supporters, and that's it.
tribal.
We'll suffer for it. And
you know what it reminds me of, though? You know the poem, First they came for my disabled and my vulnerable, because obviously we've got the Scottish Social Security now. Next they'll come for our devolved powers. Then they came for and they systematically took down Holyrood brick by brick. That's what SNP 1 and 2 is going to do when we give these seats to Reform UK.
Yeah.
The whole lot will be systematically dismantled before your eyes. So be very careful.
Well, how you do. So you're coming into one of a very busy time now, guys. But Laura, are you getting speaking to many of your constituents, and what are they saying to you?
So we've got a real mixed bag, to be honest. I have had quite a lot of people obviously knew who I was, know what I do. Obviously, A9 Julian's a massive thing up here because there's not one of us can go anywhere in Julie without using A9 at all. You can't move ATB without it. I've got a lot of very, very frustrated SNP supporters that are completely disillusioned with what they've watched in the last 5 years. They can see that they're confirmed devolutionists. They can see that they're quite happy with the Baffies on, and that's it. We're not upsetting the apple cart. We're quite comfy. Thanks very much. I've got obviously there's a lot of English people up here who tend to be very staunch independent supporters. And I had a cracking guy the other day. He said, "No, I'm no interested in independence. No. Turns about, I said, hold on. I said, you're trying to tell me you're an atheist when you're actually an agnostic. I said, because you actually totally get independence, and he totally got it from a fuel perspective. Totally got it. I spent about 20 minutes with him. He's voting for me.
Good. So I like you. We want thousands to vote for you.
He really got it. And he doesn't want us in the state of Westminster and where there literally is no choice. He accepts there is a choice. He accepts that local voices are the place to have it. And going back to what you were saying to Davey about we've only got one policy, and I'm saying to them on the doors, we've got one policy, independence no less, but we're here. We will make policy, but it will be from the constituency, from grassroots up. It's not a one shoe fits all coming from Edinburgh. We are making a policy to suit the constituents, to work with yous what we need, because rural Highlands and Islands very little to do with central Glasgow or Edinburgh or anything in the central belt. Really, it doesn't work for us. They like it. It was very warmly received when they realised I meant what I was saying.
Great stuff. I can't remember who said. I think probably a unionist who said, "London don't like us, but Edinburgh hates us." Someone said that. And talking about the Highlands and Islands, ladies, you wouldn't believe how quick the clock flies. The clock has beaten us once again. Can I thank you, Laura and Dave, for being here? Can I wish you the very, very best in the upcoming election? And for the people out there, these are the candidates you want, people with some life's experience, people who are not in it to have a career, ladies and gentlemen. These people don't want a career in politics. They want one thing and one thing only: independence, nothing else. And to our detractors out there who are allegedly from the so-called yes side, shame upon you, shame upon you. Our enemy is the unionists, not each other. Till we see you again, may you and yours take care.
Through a Scottish Prism, the programme that is unapologetically pro-Scottish independence and anti-Westminster rule. Everything we say here is viewed through a Scottish prism. Brought to you by Barhead Boy.